In the hushed depths of earth and stone, where shadows dance with memory and silence hold secrets older than written words, there lie chambers that should not be. Tombs carved from living rock by hands that knew no iron, sealed with precision, that modern engineers struggle to comprehend, adorned with symbols that speak in tongues forgotten before the first pyramid kissed the Egyptian sky. These are not merely graves, they are questions posed in granite and obsidian, riddles wrapped in the shrouds of eternity. Here, beneath the weight of millennia, the impossible sleeps. Stone blocks fitted so perfectly that not even a whisper of wind can slip between them. Corridors that stretch deeper than should be possible, following mathematics that predate Euclid by countless generations. In these sacred hollows, time bends and conventional understanding crumbles like ancient parchment. Tonight, as the world above settles into dreams, we descend into these mysteries, where the past refuses to stay buried and the impossible becomes inevitable. If this journey into history gently moves you, take a second to like, share, and subscribe. It helps more sleepy minds find their way here. By the way, where in the world are you listening from? What time is it where you are? Drop a comment before you drift off. We read every single one. Long before the Celtic Druids walked the Emerald Hills of Ireland, before the Romans carved their empire across Europe, before even Stonehenge cast its first shadow across the Salisbury plain, there stood a monument that defied the very notion of what ancient peoples could accomplish. Newgrange, older than the pyramids, older than written history itself, rises from the Boyne Valley like a dream made manifest in stone and earth. The builders of this tomb possessed knowledge that seems to transcend their supposed place in time. 5,000 years ago, when humanity was thought to be scratching out mere survival with primitive tools, these anonymous architects created something that continues to baffle modern engineers. The Great Circular Mound, nearly 300 feet in diameter and 40 feet high, conceals within its grass-covered bulk a mastery of construction that speaks of understanding far beyond what we attribute to Neolithic minds. The entrance, too, Newgrange faces southeast, aligned with mathematical precision to capture the light of the winter solstice sunrise. This is no accident, no fortunate coincidence born of chance. The entire structure was conceived and executed with an astronomical knowledge that suggests these ancient builders possessed a sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics. For exactly 17 minutes each year, on the morning of December 21st, a narrow beam of golden sunlight penetrates the roof box above the entrance, travels down the 60-foot passage, and illuminates the burial chamber at the heart of the mound. But how did they know? How did people living in an age we consider primitive calculate the exact angle, the precise orientation needed to capture this celestial event? The mathematics required to achieve such accuracy were supposedly unknown for millennia after Newgrange was built. Yet here it stands, a testament to knowledge that official timelines suggest should not have existed. The construction itself presents another impossibility. The passage tomb is built using massive orthostats, standing stones weighing several tons each, fitted together with joints so precise that centuries of Irish rain have failed to penetrate the interior. These stones were not quarried locally. Many were transported from sites over 50 miles away, a feat that would challenge modern logistics. How did Bronze Age people move multi-ton blocks across the Irish countryside without wheels, without horses, without the mechanical advantages we consider essential for such tasks? The entrance stone alone weighs over 4 tons and is covered in spiral carvings that predate all known writing systems. These triple spirals, known as triskells, appear throughout the monument, carved with tools that officially did not exist when Newgrange was built. The precision of these carvings, Their perfect symmetry and mathematical harmony suggests artisans working with sophisticated implements and possessing an aesthetic sense that rivals any classical civilization. Inside the tomb, 3 recesses branch off from the central chamber, each containing a large stone basin. These basins, carved from single blocks of granite, show evidence of having been worked from the inside out, an impossibility with primitive tools. The largest basin could not have been brought through the passage in its completed form. It had to have been carved within the chamber itself. This suggests not only advanced stoneworking techniques, but also a level of planning and foresight that contradicts everything we think we know about Neolithic capabilities. The corbelled ceiling of the chamber rises to nearly 20 feet, constructed using the same precise stone-fitting techniques that keep the interior bone dry after 50 centuries. No mortar binds these stones. They hold through perfect balance and mathematical precision. Modern architects studying the structure admit they would struggle to replicate such watertight construction using contemporary methods. Perhaps most mysteriously, recent investigations have revealed that Newgrange sits at the center of a complex of monuments that extends across the entire Boyne Valley. The positioning of these sites follows patterns that suggest a master plan conceived on a scale that encompasses miles of landscape. This is not the work of isolated tribes scratching out survival in the wilderness. This is evidence of a sophisticated civilization capable of long-term planning and massive coordinated construction projects. The builders left no written records, no explanation for their extraordinary achievement. They simply vanished from history, leaving behind a monument that continues to function exactly as designed after 5 millennia. Every winter solstice, as it has for 50 centuries, the sun finds its way into the heart of Newgrange, illuminating whatever mysteries still lie hidden in its shadows. Local folklore speaks of the site as a gateway between worlds, a place where the boundaries between the living and the dead grow thin. The Irish called it Cian Brú, the mound of the fairy palace, and believed it to be the home of the Tuatha De Danann, the supernatural people who ruled Ireland before mortal humans arrived. Perhaps these legends preserve some echo of truth about the tomb's builders, people so advanced that they seemed supernatural to those who came after. The implications of Newgrange's existence ripple through our understanding of ancient history. If Neolithic people could achieve such mathematical precision, such architectural sophistication, what else were they capable of? What other knowledge has been lost to time, dismissed as impossible because it doesn't fit our linear view of human progress? In the rolling hills of southeastern Turkey, beneath layers of earth that have hidden secrets for over 11 millennia, archaeologists have uncovered what may be the most important archaeological discovery of our time. Göbekli Tepe, the Potbelly Hill, has rewritten the story of human civilization, pushing back the origins of monumental architecture and complex society by thousands of years. When Klaus Schmidt first began excavating this site in the 1990s, he uncovered something that should not have existed: massive stone pillars, some weighing up to 20 tons, arranged in perfect circles and covered with intricate carvings of animals and symbols. These structures were built around 9500 BCE, at a time when human beings were supposed to be nomadic, hunter-gatherers living in simple bands, possessing neither the organization nor the technology to create such monuments. The dating of Göbekli Tepe sent shockwaves through the archaeological community. Here was clear evidence of monumental architecture, predating the development of agriculture, pottery, and even the wheel. According to conventional theories, complex societies could only emerge after the agricultural revolution provided the surplus food necessary to support specialized craftsmen and architects. Yet Göbekli Tepe existed 6,000 years before, Stonehenge, 7,000 years before the first Egyptian pyramids. The site consists of at least 20 circular enclosures, each containing massive T-shaped limestone pillars arranged in perfect rings. These monoliths, standing up to 18 feet tall, were quarried from bedrock using tools that officially did not exist in 9500 BCE. The precision of the quarrying, the transport of these massive blocks, and their placement in mathematically perfect circles suggests a level of organization and technical capability that contradicts everything we thought we knew about prehistoric society. But the pillars themselves are only part of the mystery. Each monolith is covered with masterful carvings depicting a menagerie of animals: lions, boars, foxes, snakes, scorpions, and birds rendered with an artistic skill that rivals any classical civilization. These are not primitive scratchings. They are sophisticated relief carvings that demonstrate advanced stoneworking techniques and artistic traditions. The animals depicted at Göbekli Tepe include species that were not native to the region when the site was built. Lions and leopards appear frequently in the carvings, yet these predators had long since retreated to more southern climates by 9500 BCE. This suggests either that the builders possess knowledge of animals from distant lands, or that the site is even older than current dating indicates. Perhaps most intriguingly, many of the pillars feature abstract symbols that appear to form a coherent symbolic system, possibly the world's oldest form of proto-writing. These symbols predate known writing systems by thousands of years, yet they appear to carry meaning, arranged in patterns that suggest communication or record-keeping. If these are indeed early forms of writing, they would push back the origins of human literacy by millennia. The construction of Göbekli Tepe would have required the coordinated effort of hundreds, possibly thousands of workers over many generations. The quarrying, transport, and placement of the massive pillars would have demanded sophisticated logistics and engineering knowledge. More significantly, it would have required a complex social organization capable of mobilizing and feeding large numbers of workers, exactly the kind of society that supposedly could not exist without agriculture. This presents what archaeologists call the Göbekli Tepe paradox. The site seems to suggest that complex social organization and monumental architecture preceded rather than followed the development of agriculture. Perhaps the need to support the workers building these monuments actually drove the development of farming techniques. If so, Göbekli Tepe doesn't just predate civilization, it may have been the catalyst that created it. The builders of Göbekli Tepe possessed astronomical knowledge as sophisticated as their construction techniques. The site is oriented to specific celestial events, and recent research suggests the pillars may function as a kind of stone calendar, marking the movement of stars and constellations across the night sky. This astronomical component adds another layer to the mystery. Not only did these prehistoric people possess advanced construction capabilities, they were also accomplished astronomers. One of the most puzzling aspects of Göbekli Tepe is what happened to it. Around 8000 BCE, at the height of its use, the entire complex was deliberately buried under tons of soil and rubble. This was not a gradual abandonment. It was an intentional act of concealment that must have required enormous effort. Why would a people capable of such magnificent construction choose to hide their greatest achievement? Some researchers theorize that climate change forced the abandonment of the site. The end of the last ice age brought dramatic environmental changes to the region, and perhaps the builders of Göbekli Tepe chose to bury their monuments rather than see them destroyed by changing conditions. Others suggest the burial was ritual in nature, part of a religious or cultural practice we no longer understand. The implications of Göbekli Tepe extend far beyond archaeology. If hunter-gatherer societies were capable of such sophisticated achievements, what other assumptions about prehistoric humanity need to be reconsidered? The site suggests that our ancestors possessed advanced knowledge and capabilities that have been lost to time, buried beneath layers of earth and conventional thinking. The mystery deepens when we consider that Göbekli Tepe is not unique. Similar sites are being discovered throughout the region, suggesting that what we've found is not an isolated achievement, but part of a widespread prehistoric civilization. The Tas Tepeler, or stone hills, of southeastern Turkey are revealing monument after monument that challenges our understanding of the deep past. As excavation continues at Göbekli Tepe, each new discovery raises more questions than it answers. Recent finds include additional pillars covered in even more sophisticated carvings, underground chambers of unknown purpose, and stone sculptures that defy classification. The site has yielded only 5% of its secrets. 95% remains buried, waiting to reveal whatever other impossibilities lie hidden in the Turkish soil. Hidden within the tombs and temples of our ancestors lies another mystery that challenges our understanding of ancient capabilities: the deliberate manipulation of sound through architectural design. These sacred spaces were not merely built to house the dead or honor the gods. They were precisely engineered acoustic instruments, designed to produce specific sound effects that modern science is only beginning to understand. In the depths of the hypogeum of Halsaflieni in Malta, carved from solid limestone around 3600 BCE, archaeologists have discovered chambers that possess extraordinary acoustic properties. The underground complex, originally a tomb for over 7,000 individuals, features rooms where whispers can be heard clearly from one end to the other, while normal conversation seems muffled and distorted. Most remarkably, certain chambers amplify only specific frequencies, particularly those in the range of the adult male voice. The oracle chamber, the most acoustically sophisticated room in the hypogeum, demonstrates sound engineering that seems impossible for its time. A person speaking in the chamber experiences their voice resonating at approximately 110 Hz, a frequency that modern research has shown to have profound effects on human consciousness. This specific frequency appears to influence brainwave patterns, inducing states of deep relaxation and enhanced meditation. The builders of the hypogeum somehow knew to engineer their most sacred space to produce exactly this effect. But how did Neolithic people, supposedly lacking any understanding of acoustics as a science, create such precisely tuned spaces? The mathematics required to calculate resonant frequencies and design chambers to amplify specific tones would not be formalized until thousands of years later. Yet these ancient architects achieved results that challenge modern acoustic engineers. The mystery deepens when we examine similar acoustic anomalies in ancient sites around the world. The Great Pyramid of Giza contains chambers that exhibit remarkable sound properties. The King's Chamber resonates at a frequency that matches the Earth's heartbeat, approximately 8 Hz, known as the Schumann resonance. When vocalists perform in this chamber, their voices are transformed, taking on otherworldly harmonics that seem to emerge from the very stones themselves. Recent experiments in the King's Chamber have revealed that specific tones produce visible vibrations in the granite sarcophagus, causing it to literally sing in response to human voices. The precision required to achieve such effects suggests that the pyramid's builders understood principles of resonance and harmonic amplification that were supposedly unknown to ancient peoples. In Ireland, the Passage Tomb at Cairn El on Cairnbane West demonstrates similar acoustic engineering. The chamber is designed so that sounds produced at specific points within the tomb are amplified and focused, creating the effect of voices speaking directly into the listener's ear, even when the speaker is across the room. Archaeological experiments have shown that drum beats produced in certain locations within the tomb generate standing wave patterns that create multiple phantom drummers. The original beat echoes and re-echoes in mathematical precision, creating complex polyrhythms from a single drum. These acoustic effects were not accidental byproducts of construction. They were clearly intentional features designed into the architecture. The builders understood something about the relationship between sound, consciousness, and sacred space that we are only beginning to rediscover. They created environments where sound itself became a tool for transformation, where the architecture itself participated in whatever rituals were performed within. The precision of these acoustic designs becomes even more remarkable when we consider the construction methods available to ancient builders. Modern acoustic engineers use sophisticated computer modeling and precise measuring instruments to achieve desired sound effects. Ancient architects accomplished the same results using only their knowledge of stone, mathematics, and sound. Knowledge that was supposedly far beyond their capabilities. At Chichen Itza in Mexico, the El Castillo Pyramid demonstrates another impossible acoustic feature. A person clapping their hands at the base of the pyramid's staircase produces an echo that sounds remarkably like the call of the Quetzal bird, sacred to the Maya. This effect only occurs when standing at specific points and clapping with precise timing. It was clearly designed rather than accidental. The acoustic properties extend beyond mere echo effects. Research has shown that the pyramid's shape and construction materials create a filtering effect that amplifies certain frequencies while suppressing others. The result is that human voices speaking from the top of the pyramid can be heard clearly, at ground level, even in crowds, while background noise is mysteriously filtered out. In China, the Temple of Heaven in Beijing incorporates acoustic features that allow whispers to travel perfectly around a circular wall, enabling quiet conversations between people standing hundreds of feet apart. The Imperial Vault of Heaven contains the echo wall, where a word whispered at one end can be heard clearly at the opposite end, despite the curved barrier between speaker and listener. These acoustic achievements suggest that ancient architects possessed a sophisticated understanding of wave physics, resonance, and the psychological effects of sound. They were not simply building tombs and temples. They were creating instruments designed to produce specific effects on human consciousness. The question remains, how did they acquire this knowledge? Some researchers theorize that ancient peoples discovered these acoustic principles through centuries of experimentation and observation. Perhaps they noticed that certain cave formations produced interesting sound effects and learned to replicate these features in their constructions. However, the mathematical precision required to achieve the effects observed in sites like the Hypogeum suggests a more systematic understanding of acoustic principles. Another possibility is that acoustic knowledge was part of a broader scientific tradition that has been lost to history. If ancient civilizations possessed advanced understanding in one area, sound engineering, what other scientific knowledge might they have developed? The acoustic mysteries of ancient tombs and temples may be glimpses of a sophisticated prehistoric science that challenges our assumptions about the linear progression of human knowledge. The psychological effects of these acoustic environments add another dimension to the mystery. Modern research has shown that specific sound frequencies can induce altered states of consciousness, promote healing, and enhance meditation. The builders of ancient acoustic chambers seem to have understood these effects intimately, creating spaces designed to facilitate spiritual or therapeutic experiences. The 110 Hz frequency that resonates throughout the hypogeum, for example, has been shown to deactivate the prefrontal cortex, the brain region associated with language and logical thinking. This temporarily shifts brain activity toward areas associated with mood, empathy, and social behavior. Ancient visitors to the hypogeum would have experienced profound changes in consciousness simply by being present in the acoustically engineered space. As our understanding of these acoustic anomalies continues to develop, each discovery raises new questions about the capabilities and knowledge of our ancestors. These were not primitive peoples stumbling accidentally onto interesting sound effects. They were sophisticated architects and engineers who understood principles of acoustics that we are only now beginning to appreciate. Deep within the bedrock of ancient Egypt, carved with impossible precision from the living granite, lies a mystery that has puzzled engineers and historians for generations. The Serapeum of Saqqara, a vast underground necropolis built to house the sacred Apis bulls, contains 24 massive granite and basalt sarcophagi that demonstrate stoneworking capabilities that seem to transcend the technological limitations of ancient civilization. Each sarcophagus is carved from a single block of granite, or basalt, weighing between 60 and 80 tons. The precision of the cutting is so exact that the walls of these massive boxes vary in thickness by no more than 2 millimeters across their entire surface. The internal corners are perfectly squared, the surfaces polished to a mirror finish that reveals no tool marks whatsoever. Modern stone cutting equipment, using diamond-tipped tools and computer-controlled machinery, struggles to achieve such precision in materials as hard as granite. The mystery deepens when we consider the tools supposedly available to ancient Egyptian craftsmen. According to conventional archaeology, these sarcophagi were created using copper tools, wooden mallets, and abrasive sand. Yet granite ranks 6.5 on the Mohs hardness scale, while copper ranks just 2.5. It is physically impossible to cut granite with copper tools. The copper would be destroyed long before making any meaningful impression on the stone. Christopher Dunn, a precision machinist who has studied these sarcophagi extensively, points out details that suggest the use of advanced machinery. The internal surfaces show evidence of having been hollowed out with tools that maintained perfect consistency across the entire cutting process. The corners display geometric precision that would be extremely difficult to achieve even with modern equipment. Most tellingly, several of the sarcophagi show evidence of having been cut from the inside out, an impossibility with hand tools, but a technique that would be natural for advanced machinery. The lids of these sarcophagi present another impossibility. Each lid weighs approximately 15 tons and fits its base with precision, measured in fractions of millimeters. The surfaces are so perfectly matched that when a lid is properly positioned, no light can penetrate the joint. This level of precision requires not only advanced cutting tools, but also sophisticated measuring and fitting techniques. But the Serapeum is not unique in demonstrating impossible stone-cutting precision. At Pumapunku in Bolivia, archaeological investigators have found stone blocks cut with accuracy that rivals modern machine work. The site, dated to approximately 536 CE, contains andesite blocks fitted together with tolerances of less than half a millimeter. The stones are cut with perfect right angles, smooth surfaces, and complex interlocking joints that require no mortar to hold them in place. The builders of Pumapunku worked with andesite, a volcanic rock that ranks 6 to 7 on the Mohs hardness scale. Like granite, it cannot be cut with bronze or copper tools. Yet the blocks at Pumapunku show evidence of having been shaped with tools that could cut through the hard stone like butter, leaving surfaces so smooth they appear to have been polished. Even more mysteriously, many of the blocks at Pumapunku contain complex geometric shapes, interlocking H-blocks, precisely cut channels, and dovetail joints that would challenge modern stone cutters. Some blocks feature internal right angles that could only have been cut with tools that could work inside the stone itself. The precision is so exact that many of the blocks still fit together perfectly after more than 1,500 years of weathering and seismic activity. In Peru, the fortress of Sacsayhuamán presents another example of impossible stone cutting. The massive limestone blocks, some weighing over 100 tons, are fitted together with such precision that a knife blade cannot be inserted between them. The blocks are not rectangular, they are cut in complex interlocking shapes that require each stone to be custom fitted to its neighbors. The mathematical calculation required to achieve such fits, combined with the physical impossibility of making corrections once the massive blocks were in place, suggests construction capabilities far beyond what we attribute to Inca civilization. The mystery of ancient stone cutting extends beyond the precision of the cuts themselves to the tools that created them. In Egypt, researchers have found granite, vessels dating to the pre-dynastic period, before 3100 BCE, that demonstrate the same impossible precision as the sarcophagi. These vessels, carved from single blocks of granite, feature walls of uniform thickness and surfaces polished to mirror perfection. Some of these granite vessels have internal shapes that would be impossible to achieve with any known ancient tool. Narrow-necked vases with spherical interiors could not have been hollowed out using chisels or any tool that requires direct access to the working surface. The only way to create such shapes would be with some form of advanced machinery, capable of working inside the stone without requiring a straight path to the cutting surface. Petrie Museum in London houses thousands of these precision stone vessels, each one representing a mystery that conventional archaeology cannot explain. The quality of work rivals anything produced by modern stone-cutting machinery, yet these objects were created thousands of years before such machinery supposedly existed. The tool marks, or rather the lack of tool marks, on these ancient stone objects present another puzzle. Modern stone cutting, even with advanced diamond tools, leaves microscopic scratches and marks that reveal the cutting process. The ancient objects show no such marks. Their surfaces are perfectly smooth, as if the stone had been shaped by some process that left no trace of the method used. Recent analysis using electron microscopy has revealed even more puzzling details. Some ancient stone surfaces show evidence of having been melted rather than cut, as if subjected to intense heat that could soften granite enough to be shaped like clay. This suggests that ancient stoneworkers possessed not only advanced cutting tools, but possibly energy sources capable of generating temperatures that could alter the molecular structure of hard stone. The implications of these discoveries extend far beyond archaeology. If ancient peoples possessed stone-cutting capabilities that match or exceed modern technology, what other advanced knowledge might they have developed? The precision stonework found at sites around the world suggests a level of technical sophistication that challenges our entire understanding of human technological progress. Perhaps most intriguingly, the locations of these impossible stone-cutting achievements span the globe: Egypt, Bolivia, Peru, Easter Island, Japan. This suggests either that advanced stone-cutting knowledge was more widespread in the ancient world than we imagine, or that these achievements represent the work of a sophisticated prehistoric civilization whose capabilities have been lost to history. The mystery of ancient precision stone cutting remains unsolved, each discovery adding new questions to an already complex puzzle. These stone objects stand as silent testimony to human capabilities that official history says should not have existed, challenging us to reconsider what our ancestors were truly capable of achieving. As we continue to study these impossible achievements, one thing becomes clear: the builders of ancient monuments possessed knowledge and capabilities that have been forgotten by modern civilization. Their stonework stands as a humbling reminder That human ingenuity may have reached heights in the distant past that we are only now beginning to appreciate, let alone understand. The ancient stone cutters have left us a legacy carved in stone, literally. Their impossible achievements continue to whisper secrets from the depths of time, challenging our assumptions about the past and suggesting that human civilization may be far older and more sophisticated than we have dared to imagine. In their precision cuts and impossible joints, we glimpse shadows of knowledge that was once possessed by our ancestors, knowledge that modern science is still struggling to comprehend. Beneath the Pacific's endless expanse, where Micronesia's scattered islands pierce the ocean's blue membrane like ancient prayers, there rises from the waters a monument that defies every law of human possibility. Madol spreads across the coral reef like a fever dream made manifest in basalt columns, its artificial islands connected by waterways that pulse with the rhythm of tides older than memory itself. The locals whisper its name with reverence, threaded through fear. Madol, the Venice of the Pacific, though Venice never knew such terrible beauty, never felt the weight of stones that should not exist in such a place. Here, on the eastern shore of Pompeii, 92 artificial islands stretch across 200 acres of shallow lagoon, each one built from massive basalt columns that tower like the ribs of some primordial beast laid bare to the sky. But it is not the scale alone that stops the breath in one's throat. It is the impossibility of it all. These hexagonal columns of volcanic rock, some weighing 25 tons or more, transported from quarries miles away across an ocean that shows no mercy to human ambition. No wheels rolled across these distant shores. No beasts of burden bent their backs to human will. Yet somehow, across the centuries between 1200 and 1700 CE, the Sodelur dynasty commanded the very stones to dance. The burial isle of Nan Dawes rises from the northeastern sector like a crown jewel of the dead, its walls built from those same impossible basalt pillars stacked with mathematical precision that would challenge modern engineers. Here, beneath the coral block platforms that catch moonlight like scattered pearls, lie the remains of the Sodelur kings, rulers who claimed dominion not just over men, but over the very elements themselves. Legend speaks of the twin sorcerers, Olisipa and Olosopa, who arrived from the mythical land of Kanamwaiso, riding upon the back of a great dragon. They raised the stones through incantations that made basalt columns fly through the air, like birds returning home, settling into place with the gentle precision of falling leaves. The old women of Pompeii still remember the chants their grandmothers sang, words in a tongue that predates written history, songs that speak of stones that swam through water and danced through sky. Modern archaeology struggles with the reality of Nan Madol's construction. The basalt columns show no tool marks, no evidence of the tremendous effort that logic demands such a project would require. They appear to have been shaped by forces beyond human comprehension, split along natural crystalline lines with such precision that each piece fits its neighbors like components of a vast three-dimensional puzzle designed by gods who understood geometry before humans learned to count. The mortuary rituals performed within these walls were ceremonies of unimaginable complexity. The dead were not simply buried, but transformed through elaborate processes that merged the spiritual with the architectural. Royal bodies were desiccated using methods lost to time, then bound in sacred mats woven from pandanus leaves blessed by priests who spent lifetimes learning the proper invocations. These mummified forms were then placed within basalt crypts designed to channel celestial energies, their positioning calculated according to astronomical principles that suggest knowledge far beyond what conventional history attributes to Micronesian cultures. The burial chambers themselves were architectural marvels of acoustic engineering. Whispers spoken at specific points within the tombs would echo through the entire complex, carrying the voices of mourners across the water to distant islands where their lamentations would blend with the eternal song of the sea. The dead were not silenced by burial, but amplified, their spiritual presence magnified through stone corridors that transformed the entire city into a massive resonating chamber. As the Sodelur dynasty reached its zenith, the burial practices grew increasingly elaborate. Royal tombs were constructed with multiple chambers, each one designed for different aspects of the afterlife journey. The central chamber housed the physical remains, surrounded by smaller chambers containing the deceased's personal artifacts, food offerings, and spiritual implements. But most mysterious of all were the sealed chambers that contained no human remains. Empty spaces carefully constructed and blessed, their purpose lost to the centuries that followed. The stones themselves seemed to hold memory within their dark, volcanic heart. Visitors to Nan Madol report sensations that defy rational explanation. The feeling of being watched from within the walls, whispers that emerge from cracks between the massive columns, shadows that move against the light in ways that suggest presence rather than mere absence of illumination. The basalt appears to absorb sound during the day, storing it within its crystalline structure, then releasing it during the quiet hours before dawn, when the distinction between the living and the dead grows thin. Archaeological excavations have uncovered burial artifacts that challenge understanding of Pacific Islander capabilities. Platinum ornaments appear alongside traditional shell decorations, though platinum requires temperatures far beyond what any known Micronesian metallurgy could achieve. Crystal lenses ground to optical precision have been found in tomb chambers. Their surfaces work to a smoothness that modern tools struggle to replicate. These artifacts suggest technological knowledge that contradicts everything known about the cultural development of Pacific societies. The tidal patterns around Nan Madol follow no predictable rhythm. The water levels rise and fall according to cycles that align with neither lunar phases nor seasonal changes, but rather with patterns that seem to respond to the burial activities within the complex. During certain ceremonial periods, the water would drain completely from specific channels, revealing pathways that remained dry for exactly the duration needed to complete funeral rites. When the ceremonies concluded, the waters would return with perfect timing, sealing the sacred spaces once more. The genealogical records preserved in oral tradition speak of the Sodelur kings as beings who straddled the boundary between human and divine. They lived for centuries rather than decades. Their lifespans extended through rituals performed within the deepest burial chambers of Nan Madol. The mummification processes used for royal bodies were not simply preservation techniques, but transformational ceremonies designed to merge the deceased with the fundamental forces that governed the complex itself. When the Nanmoaki finally overthrew the Sodelur dynasty around 1700 CE, they found the royal burial chambers empty, despite clear evidence that they had never been opened. The elaborate sarcophagi remained sealed, their basalt lids untouched by time or human hands, yet the mummified bodies had vanished as completely as if they had never existed. Only the emptiness remained, echoing with the acoustic properties that had once carried the voices of the dead across the water. The abandonment of Nan Madol coincided with changes in the ocean itself. The coral reef that had provided the foundation for the artificial islands began to shift, following patterns that marine biologists cannot explain. Channels that had remained constant for centuries suddenly changed course, while new lagoons opened where none had existed before. The sea seemed to be reclaiming the complex, not through erosion or natural decay, but through a deliberate process of transformation that suggests the ocean itself was an active participant in the city's original construction. Today, Nan Madol sits partially submerged, its upper levels still visible above the rising tides that seem to pulse with their own mysterious rhythm. The burial chambers that once echoed with ceremonial chants now echo with the sound of water lapping against basalt walls, a liquid percussion that creates harmonics within the stone corridors. Fish swim through chambers where kings once lay in state, their scales catching fragments of sunlight that penetrate the depths, like scattered memories of a glory that time has not entirely erased. The mystery deepens with each low tide that reveals more of the complex's foundation. Beneath the visible structures, ground-penetrating radar has detected geometric patterns that extend far deeper into the seafloor than any known construction technique could achieve. These underground chambers appear to be carved directly from the living rock of the ocean floor, their walls following natural geological formations that suggest they were discovered rather than created. Ancient spaces that the Sodalur dynasty incorporated into their architectural vision. The basalt columns themselves continue to puzzle materials scientists. Their chemical composition matches no known volcanic formations in the region, while their crystalline structure shows properties that suggest they were formed under pressure and temperature conditions that do not exist anywhere on Earth's surface. Some researchers theorize that the columns were created through unknown processes that manipulated the fundamental properties of volcanic rock, transforming ordinary basalt into a material with properties that bridge the gap between natural stone and advanced ceramics. As we drift deeper into the mysteries of Nan Madol, the distinction between architecture and burial ground dissolves entirely. The entire complex becomes a single massive tomb, designed not just to house the dead, but to transform death itself into something beyond human comprehension. The Sodalur kings did not simply die. They underwent a metamorphosis that merged their spiritual essence with the very stones that surrounded them, becoming part of the structure that would outlast any merely human monument. Long before the pyramids pierced the Egyptian sky, before Stonehenge arranged its circle of megaliths across the Salisbury Plain, there stood in Ireland's Boyne Valley a monument to the dead that captured light itself and transformed it into something sacred. Newgrange rises from the green fields like a sleeping giant, its white quartz facade catching the morning sun and reflecting it back toward the heavens in a display that has continued unbroken for 5,000 years. The monument's architects were tomb builders who understood astronomy with a precision that suggests knowledge beyond their supposed time. Every stone of Newgrange's construction was placed with mathematical exactitude, designed to capture and concentrate the light of the winter solstice sunrise, channeling it through a narrow passage that penetrates the heart of the burial chamber, like a golden spear thrust into the darkness of death itself. The Great Mound stretches 85 meters across and 13 meters high, its circumference ringed by 97 massive stones called curbstones, each one carved with spirals, diamonds and patterns that speak in the geometric language of the cosmos. But it is curbstone 52 that draws the eye with hypnotic power, its surface covered in triple spirals and concentric circles that seem to rotate even in stillness, creating optical illusions that suggest movement within stone that has stood motionless since before written history began. The passage tomb's entrance faces southeast, precisely aligned to catch the first rays of the winter solstice sun as it rises above the Wicklow Mountains. For 17 minutes, and 17 minutes only, light streams through the roof box above the entrance, travels 19 meters down the narrow passage, and illuminates the triple spiral carved into the back wall of the burial chamber. This phenomenon occurs with such precision that modern astronomers use it to calibrate their instruments, a testament to the astronomical knowledge possessed by Neolithic farmers, who supposedly knew nothing of celestial mechanics. But the light that enters Newgrange during those 17 sacred minutes is not ordinary sunlight. The passage tomb's architecture transforms the solar rays through a process that ancient builders understood, but modern science struggles to explain. The white quartz walls of the passage act as prisms, breaking the winter sunlight into component wavelengths that bathe the burial chamber in colors that exist nowhere else on Earth. Golden hues that shift through spectrum ranges that human eyes can perceive but cannot quite categorize. The burial chamber itself defies conventional understanding of Neolithic capabilities. The corbelled roof rises 6 meters above the floor in a perfect dome that has remained watertight for 50 centuries, without the use of mortar or any binding agent. Each stone was shaped and positioned to bear the weight of those above it, while maintaining the precise acoustic properties that transform the chamber into a resonating space where whispers become songs and songs become something approaching divine music. Archaeological excavations have revealed that Newgrange was not simply a tomb, but a machine for transformation, a device designed to transmute death into rebirth through processes that merged the physical with the metaphysical. The cremated remains found within the chamber show evidence of ritual preparation that goes far beyond simple burning. The bones were calcined at temperatures that could not be achieved through normal funeral pyres, processed with minerals that do not occur naturally in Ireland, then arranged in patterns that correspond to stellar configurations visible only during the winter solstice. The spirals carved throughout Newgrange follow mathematical progressions that appear throughout nature. The golden ratio found in nautilus shells, the Fibonacci sequence that governs plant growth, the logarithmic curves that describe galaxy formation. These were not random decorations, but encoded information. Instructions left by the builders to guide the dead through transformation processes that required precise mathematical knowledge to complete successfully. The monument's builders possessed understanding of Earth's precession that should have been impossible for their time period. The roof box alignment accounts for the gradual shift in Earth's rotational axis over thousands of years, suggesting that the builders knew their monument would need to maintain its solar connection across millennia. This required calculations of extraordinary complexity, involving astronomical observations extended over periods that far exceeded any individual human lifetime. The basin stones within the burial chamber were carved from single blocks of granite that had to be transported from mountains 40 kilometers away. These were not simple containers, but precision instruments designed to focus and concentrate energies in ways that modern technology cannot replicate. Water placed in these basins exhibits properties that defy conventional physics. It maintains constant temperature regardless of external conditions, remains clear and fresh without any preservation methods, and produces harmonic vibrations, when struck, that resonate throughout the entire monument. During the winter solstice phenomenon, the light entering Newgrange undergoes changes that suggest the monument functions as more than mere architecture. Temperature readings within the burial chamber show fluctuations that follow no pattern related to external weather conditions, but rather correlate with solar radiation levels in spectrum ranges invisible to human perception. The stones themselves seem to store and release energy in cycles that extend far beyond the 17 minutes of direct illumination. The builders of Newgrange left behind tools and artifacts that challenge every assumption about Neolithic technology. Stone spheres of perfect geometric precision, their surfaces work to tolerances that modern machines struggle to achieve. Crystal formations that appear to be artificially grown rather than naturally occurring, their internal structures designed to refract light in ways that enhance the monument's solar phenomena. Metal objects composed of alloys that require smelting techniques supposedly unknown to the tomb's builders. The passage tomb's acoustic properties create effects that transform human voices into something approaching superhuman communication. Words spoken within the burial chamber are amplified and modulated through the stone architecture, emerging from the monument's exterior as sounds that carry across the Boyne Valley with startling clarity. This suggests that Newgrange functioned as a communication device, allowing the dead to maintain contact with the living world through architectural means. The soil composition around Newgrange shows anomalies that extend deep into the earth beneath the monument. Mineral deposits that do not occur naturally in the region form geometric patterns that mirror the spirals carved into the monument's stones. These underground formations suggest that the builders selected the site not for its practical advantages but for properties that exist within the earth itself, natural energies that the monument was designed to harness and focus. The cremated remains found within Newgrange show chemical signatures that indicate the funeral processes involved more than simple burning. Trace elements present in the bone. Ash correspond to astronomical events, stellar compositions that mirror the mineral content found in meteorites known to have fallen during the monument's period of use. This suggests that the burial rituals were timed to coincide with cosmic events, incorporating celestial materials into the transformation processes that prepared the dead for their journey into whatever realm awaited beyond the visible world. As centuries passed and the original builders disappeared into the mists of prehistory, Newgrange continued to function with mechanical precision that suggested ongoing maintenance by forces beyond human intervention. The winter solstice alignment never wavered despite the gradual precession of Earth's axis. The white quartz facade maintained its reflective properties despite exposure to millennia of Irish weather. The passage remained clear and accessible, despite the monument's location in a landscape prone to flooding. Medieval chroniclers recorded strange phenomena associated with Newgrange during the winter months. Lights that emerged from the monument without visible source, sounds that resembled human voices singing in languages that no living person could identify, warmth that radiated from the stones even during the coldest nights of winter. These accounts were dismissed as folklore until modern sensors confirmed that the monument does indeed generate electromagnetic fields that fluctuate according to patterns that correlate with celestial events. The recent discovery of similar passage, tombs throughout the Boyne Valley, suggests that Newgrange was not an isolated monument, but part of a vast network designed to function as a unified system. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed underground connections between these sites, tunnels and chambers that extend far beneath the valley floor, creating a subterranean complex that rivals the visible monuments in scale and sophistication. The triple spiral motif that appears throughout Newgrange corresponds to patterns found in passage tombs across Atlantic Europe, from Scotland's Orkney Islands to Spain's Galician coast. This suggests a shared understanding among Neolithic cultures that extended far beyond what conventional archaeology considers possible for the period. The knowledge required to construct such monuments could not have developed in isolation, but required communication and coordination across vast distances by peoples who supposedly possessed no means of long-distance travel or communication. As we contemplate the mystery of Newgrange, the distinction between tomb and temple dissolves into irrelevance. The monument served both functions simultaneously, housing the dead while providing the living with access to cosmic forces that could transform death into rebirth, ending into beginning, darkness into light. The builders of Newgrange understood that death was not termination, but transformation, and they constructed their monument to facilitate that transformation through architectural means that merged human ingenuity with cosmic mechanics. The winter solstice continues to bring pilgrims to Newgrange, drawn by the promise of witnessing light triumph over darkness in the most literal sense possible. But the monument offers more than symbolic victory. It provides direct experience of the forces that its builders understood and harnessed. Forces that continue to operate within the stone chambers where the dead once waited for rebirth and where the living can still glimpse the cosmic mechanics that govern existence itself. In the fertile plains of Sichuan province, where the Min River curves through landscapes that have watched civilizations rise and fall like seasonal harvests, archaeologists unearthed in 1986 a discovery that shattered every assumption about ancient Chinese culture. The bronze and jade artifacts, pulled from two ceremonial pits near the village of Sanxingdui, belong to a civilization that should not have existed. A culture that created artworks of such sophistication and alien beauty that they seem to originate from a different world entirely. The burial offerings found within these sacrificial pits were not merely grave goods, but windows into a civilization that understood death as a passage between realms of existence that conventional archaeology cannot begin to map. Gold masks, with features that blend human characteristics with something distinctly otherworldly. Bronze trees that stretch toward invisible heavens, their branches supporting birds and figures that seem poised for flight into dimensions beyond the visible world. Jade Kong, ritual tubes whose purpose remains as mysterious as their perfect. Geometric precision, carved with faces that watch from the threshold between life and death, with eyes that seem to hold knowledge of both states. The civilization that created these artifacts flourished between 1200 and 1100 BCE, contemporary with China's Shang dynasty, yet utterly different in every aspect of artistic expression and cultural development. Where Shang bronzes display the familiar motifs of Chinese art, dragons and phoenixes, geometric patterns that would influence Chinese aesthetics for millennia. The Sanxingdui artifacts show influences that cannot be traced to any known culture. Their creators seem to draw inspiration from sources that existed outside the normal channels of cultural transmission. The bronze masks excavated from the pits display facial features that challenge every assumption about the appearance of ancient Chinese populations. Elongated faces with prominent noses, ears that extend beyond human proportions, eyes that bulge with an intensity that suggests vision extending beyond the normal spectrum of human perception. These were not portraits of living rulers, but representations of beings who inhabited the liminal space between mortality and whatever lay beyond. Death masks for entities that may never have possessed physical form in any recognizable sense. The largest of these masks measures 1.38 meters across and weighs over 10 kilograms of pure bronze, its surface covered in gold leaf that still gleams with the fire of its original creation. The mouth opens in an expression that could be interpreted as a scream of anguish or a song of transcendence, while the eyes stare outward with an intensity that seems to pierce through time itself. This was not crafted to represent any human face, but rather to serve as an interface between the world of the living and realms of existence that normal human consciousness could not access directly. The bronze sacred tree, discovered in Pit 2, stands nearly 4 meters tall, its trunk rising from a base that suggests roots extending deep into underworlds beyond physical reach. 9 branches spiral around the central trunk, each one supporting birds whose wings are spread as if caught in the moment of taking flight towards celestial realms. The tree itself seems to function as a cosmic axis, connecting the earthly realm, where the dead begin their journey, with the celestial spheres where their transformation would be completed. But it is the jade artifacts that provide the most haunting glimpse into Sanxingdui's mortuary beliefs. The jade Kong found in the burial pits are more than ceremonial objects. They are precision instruments designed to focus and manipulate energies that the builders understood, but that modern science cannot detect or measure. Their perfectly square exteriors house circular interior channels that seem designed to guide some form of energy or essence through geometric transformations that mirror the mathematical principles governing cosmic motion. The jade itself poses mysteries that gemologists struggle to resolve. Chemical analysis reveals mineral compositions that do not match any known jade deposits in China or anywhere else in the world. The stone appears to have been formed under pressure and temperature conditions that could not exist naturally on Earth's surface, while its crystalline structure shows properties that suggest artificial enhancement through processes that remain unknown to contemporary materials science. The mortuary rituals associated with these artifacts involved cremation processes that went far beyond simple burning. The ceremonial pits contained layers of ash that show evidence of temperatures exceeding 2000 degrees Celsius, heat levels that could not be achieved through any known ancient technology. Within these ash layers, archaeologists found fragments of bone that had been transformed into a glassy substance that preserved cellular structures in perfect detail while fundamentally altering their molecular composition. The burial pits themselves were constructed according to principles that suggest the builders possessed advanced knowledge of geology and underground hydrology. Each pit was positioned to align with underground water sources that follow geometric patterns extending throughout the region. The walls were lined with materials that create electromagnetic fields when saturated with water, transforming the burial chambers into devices that could generate and focus energies in ways that modern technology cannot replicate. The Sanxingdui civilization disappeared as suddenly as it had emerged, leaving behind no written records, no architectural remains, no trace of the cities where its people must have lived. Only the burial pits remain, filled with artifacts that suggest a culture that had solved the fundamental problems of mortality through technological means that transcended the distinction between science and magic. The ceremonial objects were not simply placed in the pits, but were subjected to ritual destruction that seems designed to activate rather than terminate their function. The bronze figurines found among the burial goods display characteristics that suggest the Sanxingdui people possessed knowledge of human anatomy that exceeded what conventional medicine could provide. Internal organs are represented with accuracy that implies direct observation of living systems, while the positioning of energy meridians matches traditional Chinese medicine concepts that supposedly developed centuries later. These were not artistic representations, but technical diagrams, instruction manuals for processes that involved the conscious manipulation of the life force itself. Recent excavations have uncovered additional pits that contain artifacts even more mysterious than those found in the original discoveries. Silk fragments that maintain their integrity, despite burial in conditions that should have destroyed organic materials within decades. Bronze alloys that show no signs of corrosion, despite exposure to groundwater for over 3 millennia. Crystal formations that appear to have been grown rather than carved, their internal structures designed to focus light and sound in ways that create harmonic resonances throughout the burial complex. The gold masks and ornaments display working techniques that challenge every assumption about ancient metallurgy. The gold shows no tool marks, no evidence of hammering or molding, but rather appears to have been shaped through processes that manipulated the metal at the molecular level. Electron microscopy reveals grain structures that could only be achieved through controlled cooling under conditions that would require knowledge of advanced metallurgical principles. The bird motifs that appear throughout the Sanxingdui artifacts correspond to no known species, but rather represent beings that seem designed for flight through media other than air. Their wing structures suggest adaptation for movement through energy fields rather than atmospheric pressure, while their positioning on the bronze sacred trees indicates knowledge of principles that modern physics has only recently begun to explore. The possibility that consciousness itself might be a form of energy that could be directed and controlled through appropriate technology. The ceremonial destruction of the artifacts before burial appears to have been designed to release energy stored within their physical forms. The bronze items show evidence of having been deliberately shattered through exposure to intense heat, followed by rapid cooling, creating stress patterns that transform the metal into a substance with properties that exist somewhere between solid matter and pure energy. The jade Kong were subjected to similar processes, their perfect geometric forms fractured along lines that seem to follow mathematical principles rather than random breakage patterns. The Sanxingdui culture's understanding of death appears to have been based on principles that viewed physical existence as merely one phase in a continuous process of transformation. The burial rituals were not designed to preserve the dead, but to accelerate their transition into states of being that existed beyond the limitations of physical form. The artifacts found in the pits were not grave goods but tools, devices designed to facilitate the conscious navigation of realms that exist beyond the boundary of normal human perception. As archaeological work continues at Sanxingdui, each new discovery deepens rather than resolves the mystery of this impossible civilization. Carbon dating confirms the age of the artifacts while raising questions about the technological capabilities of Bronze Age cultures. Chemical analysis reveals materials and processes that challenge fundamental assumptions about ancient knowledge. The jade mansions of Sanxingdui were not simply tombs, but laboratories where the living learned to transform the dead into something that transcended the normal cycle of existence. The silence that surrounds Sanxingdui's disappearance is itself a form of communication, a message encoded in absence that speaks of a civilization that achieved its ultimate goal. They did not simply die or migrate, but underwent a collective transformation that moved them beyond the need for physical existence. Their burial pits remain as monuments to a success that conventional archaeology cannot recognize. The successful completion of humanity's oldest and most fundamental quest, the conquest of death itself through knowledge that transforms endings into beginnings, dissolution into rebirth, mortality into whatever lies beyond. Perfection that defied the crude tools supposedly available to its builders. The Lycian architects had somehow carved entire cities from living rock, their tombs rising like frozen dreams against the Mediterranean sky. Each facade told stories in stone that scholars still struggled to decipher. Each doorway opened onto chambers where ancient kings had expected to sleep until the world's end. But the Lycian tombs were merely whispers compared to the thunderous mystery that awaited in the highlands of Armenia, where the ancient kingdom of Urartu had once flourished like a garden between warring empires. Here, in the shadow of Mount Ararat, where legend claimed the Ark had come to rest, the Urartian kings had built their eternal homes in ways that challenged every assumption about Bronze Age capabilities. The tomb of King Argishti stretched deep into the volcanic bedrock, its passages following geometric patterns that seemed to mirror the movement of celestial bodies across the ancient sky. The burial chamber itself was a marvel of engineering precision, its walls perfectly aligned with cardinal directions, its ceiling decorated with star maps that matched astronomical observations far more sophisticated than any Bronze Age civilization should have possessed. Archaeologists studying the Urartian burial complex discovered something that made them question the very timeline of human technological development. The tomb's construction showed evidence of advanced metallurgy, with iron tools used alongside bronze ones, in ways that suggested a far more gradual and sophisticated transition between Metal Ages than traditional archaeology had proposed. The king's burial goods included weapons forged with techniques that wouldn't be rediscovered in Europe for another 1,000 years. From the ancient highlands of Armenia, our journey through impossible tombs carries us across oceans and centuries to the windswept plateaus of Peru, where the Chavin civilization flourished in the shadows of the Andes long before the Inca ever dreamed of empire. Here, in the sacred complex of Chavin de Huantar, ancient architects created burial chambers that seem to exist in defiance of both physics and time. The Chavin tombs were not simply places of burial, they were acoustic marvels that transformed the act of mourning into something approaching divine communion. The stone passages had been designed with such mathematical precision that they created specific sound effects, amplifying whispers into thunderous pronouncements while dampening loud voices into gentle murmurs. The ancient architects had somehow understood principles of acoustics that wouldn't be formally codified by science for millennia. Deep within the Chavin complex, archaeologists discovered burial chambers where the walls themselves seemed to breathe. The stone surfaces had been carved with intricate patterns that created optical illusions when viewed by flickering torchlight, making the rigid granite appear to flow like water or undulate like living skin. The dead had been laid to rest in rooms that seemed alive, where reality itself bent to accommodate the passage between worlds. The most remarkable discovery came when researchers realized that the entire Chavin burial complex had been designed as a massive musical instrument. The positioning of chambers, the angles of corridors, the placement of carved openings, everything worked together to create haunting melodies when the mountain winds blew through the structure. The ancient dead rested in tombs that sang eternal songs, their burial chambers serving as organ pipes in a stone symphony that had been playing for over 2,000 years. But the acoustic mysteries of Chavin de Huantar were nothing compared to the engineering impossibilities discovered in the tombs of Sacsayhuamán, high above the ancient Inca capital of Cusco. Here, massive stone blocks weighing dozens of tons had been fitted together with such precision that a knife blade couldn't slip between them. The construction techniques required to achieve such perfection remained mysterious even to modern engineers, equipped with laser-guided tools and computer modeling. The Sacsayhuamán burial complex extended far beyond what tourists could see on the surface. Deep underground, a network of chambers and passages stretched for miles through the living rock, connecting burial sites across vast distances through tunnels that maintained perfect structural integrity despite earthquakes that had leveled cities. The ancient architects had somehow understood geological forces well enough to build structures that grew stronger rather than weaker as the earth moved around them. In these subterranean chambers, archaeologists found evidence of construction, techniques that seemed to treat massive stone blocks like clay. The granite walls showed signs of having been molded rather than carved, with impossible curves and joints that suggested the builders had somehow softened the stone during construction. Local legends spoke of ancient kings who knew the secret, of making stone pliable, who could shape mountain faces with their bare hands and seal their tombs with walls that no tool could breach. The mysteries deepened as researchers ventured into the Amazon basin, where the great river system had long hidden its secrets beneath canopies of green. Here, scattered throughout the rainforest, lay burial sites that challenged every assumption about pre-Columbian civilization in South America. The ancient peoples of the Amazon had created elaborate tomb complexes that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of hydrology, archaeology, and astronomy. The Marajoara culture, flourishing on Marajo Island at the mouth of the Amazon, had, built elaborate burial mounds that rose like artificial mountains from the river plain. These weren't simple earthworks. They were precisely engineered structures designed to channel and control water flow during the Amazon's annual floods. The ancient architects had transformed the very landscape into a massive drainage system, ensuring that their burial sites remained dry and intact, even when the surrounding forest became a vast inland sea. Inside these flood-resistant burial mounds, archaeologists discovered ceramic work of extraordinary sophistication. The Marajoara potters had developed glazing techniques and firing methods that produced ceramics rivaling those of classical Greece or Tang Dynasty China. The burial vessels showed artistic sensibilities that seemed to leap across centuries, their designs displaying abstract concepts and mathematical relationships that felt almost modern in their complexity. The Marajoara tombs revealed another impossible feature. They had been sealed using a technique that created hermetic preservation, conditions without any obvious means of achieving such environmental control. Bodies buried 1,000 years ago emerged in states of preservation that rivaled Egyptian mummies. Despite the humid tropical climate that should have reduced organic material to dust within decades, the ancient embalmers had discovered preservation, methods that modern science still couldn't fully replicate. Our journey through impossible tombs carries us now across the Indian Ocean to the island of Madagascar, where the Malagasy people developed burial traditions that created some of the most enigmatic tomb structures in human history. Here, in the highlands of the Central Plateau, ancient architects carved elaborate burial complexes from solid granite, creating chambers that seem to exist in harmony with the island's unique geological forces. The royal tombs of the Marina Kingdom defied conventional understanding of stoneworking capabilities. The burial chambers had been carved with such precision that they incorporated the natural crystal formations within the granite, creating walls that sparkled with embedded quartz and mica. The ancient architects had somehow understood the geological structure well enough to work with the stone's natural patterns rather than against them, creating burial spaces that seem to have grown from the earth rather than being imposed upon it. These crystal-embedded chambers created extraordinary optical effects during certain times of day when sunlight entered through carefully positioned openings. The burial chambers would light up with prismatic displays that transformed the granite walls into shimmering curtains of color. The dead rested in tombs that caught and reflected light like massive gems, their final resting places becoming beacons that could be seen from miles away across the highland landscape. The construction techniques used in the Malagasy royal tombs suggested knowledge of engineering principles that shouldn't have existed in pre-industrial Madagascar. The chambers were carved from single pieces of granite using methods that left no tool marks, no evidence of the chisels and hammers that should have been necessary for such work. The stone surfaces were polished to mirror smoothness using techniques that modern gem cutters would recognize but couldn't easily replicate without advanced machinery. Perhaps most mysteriously, the Malagasy tombs incorporated a unique approach to environmental control that kept the burial chambers at constant temperature and humidity, regardless of outside weather conditions. The architects had created a passive climate control system using principles of thermodynamics that weren't formally understood by science until the 19th century. The ancient dead rested in perfectly controlled environments that preserved their remains and burial goods in conditions that museum curators would envy. The tomb complex extended far beyond the royal burial chambers. A network of underground passages connected sacred sites across the island, creating a subterranean highway system that allowed priests and mourners to travel between tombs without ever appearing on the surface. These tunnels maintained perfect structural integrity despite Madagascar's volcanic activity, their builders somehow understanding geological forces well enough to create passages that remained stable through centuries of seismic activity. The mysteries of Madagascar's crystal chambers were equaled by discoveries in the remote islands of Polynesia, where ancient navigators had created burial sites that demonstrated impossible knowledge of astronomy and ocean currents. On Easter Island, the Moai statues that gazed endlessly across the Pacific were only the visible portion of a vast burial complex that extended deep beneath the island's surface. Recent archaeological excavations revealed that the famous Easter Island heads were actually full-body statues, their torsos buried beneath centuries of accumulated soil. But the true surprise came when researchers discovered that these monumental figures were positioned above elaborate underground burial chambers that had been carved from the island's volcanic bedrock using techniques that modern engineers found difficult to understand. The underground burial complex of Easter Island demonstrated knowledge of hydraulic engineering that shouldn't have existed in ancient Polynesia. The chambers had been designed with drainage systems that kept them dry despite the island's position in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The ancient architects had somehow calculated water table levels and tidal influences with precision that allowed them to create burial spaces that remained habitable even below sea level. The positioning of the Easter Island burial chambers revealed another layer of mystery. Each underground tomb was aligned with specific astronomical phenomena, solstices, equinoxes, and the rising of particular star clusters. The ancient architects had created a massive astronomical calendar in stone, with burial chambers serving as observation points for tracking celestial movements across years and decades. The dead were interred in tombs that functioned as components in a giant navigational computer, their resting places helping future generations chart courses across the trackless Pacific. The construction of these astronomical burial chambers required mathematical knowledge that challenged assumptions about Polynesian capabilities. The angles and alignments were calculated with precision that demanded understanding of spherical geometry and celestial mechanics. The ancient architects had somehow mastered mathematical concepts that European scholars wouldn't develop until the Renaissance, using this knowledge to create tombs that served as permanent monuments to their scientific achievements. But Easter Island's mysteries paled before the discoveries made in the Society Islands, where ancient Tahitian architects had created floating burial chambers that defied every principle of marine engineering. These tombs were constructed on artificial islands that had been built in the middle of lagoons, their foundations somehow anchored to coral reefs in ways that allowed them to rise and fall with tidal changes while maintaining perfect stability. The floating tomb complexes incorporated sophisticated understanding of buoyancy and weight distribution. The burial chambers were designed to remain level, even as water levels changed, their architects having calculated load-bearing requirements. with precision that modern naval engineers would recognize as advanced hydrodynamic design. The ancient Tahitians had created burial sites that sailed eternally on the lagoon's surface, carrying their dead on voyages that would never end. From the floating tombs of Polynesia, our journey carries us back across the Indian Ocean to the ancient highlands of Ethiopia, where the Aksumite civilization created burial monuments that demonstrated engineering capabilities that seem almost supernatural in their complexity. Here, in the rocky landscapes near modern-day Aksum, ancient architects carved elaborate tomb complexes that incorporated acoustic properties so sophisticated they transformed burial chambers into musical instruments. The royal tombs of Aksum were hewn from solid granite using techniques that left surfaces so smooth they reflected images like polished mirrors. But the true marvel lay in their acoustic design. Each burial chamber had been carved with mathematical precision to create specific, harmonic frequencies when wind passed through carefully designed openings. The ancient architects had transformed tomb complexes into massive stone organs that played haunting melodies whenever Ethiopian winds swept across the highland plateau. The musical properties of the Aksumite tombs weren't accidental. They were the result of sophisticated understanding of acoustic engineering that incorporated both architectural and musical knowledge. Each chamber was tuned to specific pitches, and the complex as a whole was designed to create harmonious chords when multiple tombs resonated simultaneously. The ancient dead were interred in burial sites that sang together in stone symphonies, their resting places creating music that could be heard for miles across the Ethiopian highlands. Archaeological investigation revealed that the Aksumite architects had achieved their acoustic marvels through precise calculation of chamber dimensions, wall angles, and opening sizes. The mathematics involved required understanding of harmonic, ratios and frequency relationships that wouldn't be formally codified by music theory until medieval times. The ancient builders had somehow mastered acoustic engineering principles that modern concert hall designers study for years to understand. The construction techniques used in the Ethiopian singing tombs demonstrated other impossible capabilities. The granite had been carved using methods that left no tool marks, suggesting either incredibly advanced cutting tools or techniques for softening stone that modern technology couldn't replicate. The burial chambers showed evidence of precision drilling that created perfectly circular holes in solid rock, achieved through means that remained mysterious even to contemporary stoneworking experts. The Aksumite tomb complex extended far beyond the musical burial chambers. Underground passages connected scattered sites across the region, creating a subterranean network that allowed priests and mourners to travel between tombs through routes that were perfectly carved and permanently stable. These tunnels incorporated ventilation systems that maintained breathable air throughout their length, demonstrating understanding of air circulation principles that modern mining engineers would recognize as advanced environmental control. The mysteries of Ethiopia's singing stones were matched by discoveries in the ancient kingdom of Kush, where Nubian architects created burial pyramids that rivaled those of Egypt in their complexity, while incorporating engineering innovations that their northern neighbors never achieved. The royal cemetery at Miro contained dozens of pyramids that demonstrated construction techniques so advanced they seemed to belong to a different era entirely. The Nubian pyramids were built using a unique approach to weight distribution that allowed them to achieve remarkable height while using less material than comparable Egyptian structures. The ancient architects had discovered engineering principles that modern builders would recognize as advanced load-bearing design, creating monuments that were both more economical and more structurally sound than their more famous counterparts along the Nile. Inside these efficient pyramids, archaeologists discovered burial chambers that incorporated environmental control systems of extraordinary sophistication. The tombs maintained constant temperature and humidity through passive climate control that worked without any moving parts or external energy source. The ancient architects had created burial environments that preserved organic materials for millennia, their understanding of thermodynamics allowing them to build tombs that functioned as perfect preservation chambers. The Kushite burial chambers revealed another impossible feature. They had been decorated with pigments that remained vibrant after 2,000 years of burial. The colors showed no signs of fading or chemical breakdown, suggesting either advanced knowledge of paint chemistry or access to mineral pigments with properties that modern scientists found difficult to analyze. The ancient artists had created tomb decorations that seemed immune to the passage of time, their artwork preserved in conditions that museum conservators could only dream of achieving. The positioning of the Nubian pyramids demonstrated astronomical knowledge that rivaled that of any ancient civilization. Each tomb was aligned with specific celestial phenomena, and the complex as a whole functioned as a massive astronomical calendar that tracked the movement of stars and planets across years and decades. The ancient architects had created burial sites that served as permanent observatories, their tombs functioning as components in a stone computer designed to calculate the passage of cosmic time. But perhaps the most remarkable discovery in the Kushite Royal Cemetery was evidence of construction techniques that seemed to treat massive stone blocks as if they were lightweight building materials. The pyramid builders had somehow transported and positioned multi-ton granite blocks with precision that suggested either advanced lifting technology or knowledge of principles that made heavy stones easier to manipulate. The ancient engineers had achieved construction capabilities that modern building crews would find challenging even with powered equipment. As our exploration of impossible tombs continues, each discovery seems to expand rather than resolve the mysteries surrounding ancient burial practices, from the crystal chambers of Madagascar to the singing stones of Ethiopia, from the floating tombs of Polynesia to the acoustic marvels of Peru. Ancient architects consistently demonstrated capabilities that challenged every assumption about technological development in the pre-industrial world. These burial sites weren't simply places where ancient peoples laid their dead to rest. They were demonstrations of knowledge and capability that suggested civilizations far more sophisticated than traditional archaeology had recognized. The builders of these impossible tombs possessed understanding of mathematics, engineering, astronomy, and materials science that wouldn't be matched again for centuries or millennia after their civilizations disappeared. Yet the tombs themselves remained silent witnesses to achievements that history had forgotten and capabilities that science still struggled to explain. Each impossible burial chamber stood as proof that human knowledge and technical skill had reached heights in the ancient world that scholars were only beginning to appreciate, their very existence challenging fundamental assumptions about the progression of civilization and the development of human capability across time. The weight of these discoveries settled like dust in abandoned chambers, each revelation adding to mysteries that seemed to deepen rather than resolve with investigation. The ancient architects who created these impossible tombs had possessed knowledge that transcended the supposed limitations of their eras, their achievements standing as permanent challenges to conventional understanding of human development. In burial chambers that sang with stone voices and passages that defied the passage of time, they had left monuments to capabilities that the modern world was still struggling to comprehend. As night falls across these scattered sites, from the windswept highlands of Ethiopia to the remote islands of the Pacific, the ancient tombs continue their eternal watch. In chambers where crystal walls catch starlight and passages where acoustic perfection transforms breath into music, the mysterious builder's greatest achievements wait in patient silence, ready to reveal their secrets to those bold enough to question everything they thought they knew about the capabilities of the distant past. The whispers of the ancients grow stronger as we venture deeper into the realm of impossible architecture, where each tomb holds secrets that challenge everything we believe about human capability and divine intervention. The very stones seem to pulse with forgotten knowledge, their surfaces bearing witness to achievements that should not exist within the boundaries of accepted history. In the emerald hills of Ireland's Boyne Valley, older than Stonehenge, older than the Great Pyramid of Giza, stands a monument that defies every assumption about Neolithic capability. Newgrange emerges from the landscape like a sleeping giant, its pristine white quartz facade gleaming against the Irish sky, with an otherworldly luminescence that speaks of intentions far beyond mere burial. The passage tomb reveals its first impossibility in its very construction. How did people possessing only stone tools manage to transport massive stones weighing up to 5 tons across distances that would challenge modern machinery? The orthostats that line the narrow passageway stand like sentinels, each one positioned with mathematical precision that suggests knowledge of engineering principles not supposedly discovered until millennia later. But it is the roof box above, the entrance that transforms Newgrange from mysterious to miraculous. This precisely calculated opening allows sunlight to penetrate the central chamber for exactly 17 minutes during the winter solstice, illuminating the triple spiral carved into the backstone with golden fire. The astronomical alignment requires not only understanding of complex celestial mechanics, but also the ability to predict and account for the precession of the equinoxes over thousands of years. The builders somehow knew that the Earth's axis wobbles like a spinning top, completing one full cycle every 26,000 years. They understood the subtle shift in the position of stars and calculated their construction to maintain its solar alignment across centuries. This knowledge supposedly didn't exist in human understanding until Greek astronomers like Hipparchus documented it around 150 BCE, more than 3,000 years after Newgrange was completed. Inside the chamber, corbelled stone masonry creates a vaulted ceiling that has remained watertight for over 5 millennia without mortar or cement. Each stone locks into place with such precision that not a single drop of moisture has penetrated the chamber in 50 centuries. Modern architects study this technique, marveling at the sophistication required to achieve such perfect structural integrity, using only carefully shaped stones. The carvings that adorn Newgrange's stones present another layer of impossibility. The triple spirals, diamonds, and serpentine patterns are executed with such artistic mastery and symbolic complexity that they suggest a sophisticated culture with advanced understanding of both mathematics and metaphysics. These are not the crude scratchings of primitive people, but the refined work of master craftsmen operating within a highly developed artistic tradition. Recent archaeological discoveries around Newgrange have revealed an entire sacred landscape, encompassing hundreds of smaller monuments, all interconnected through sightlines and astronomical alignments. This ancient complex represents not just individual burial sites, but a comprehensive sacred geography that transforms the entire valley into a vast ceremonial landscape dedicated to tracking celestial movements and honoring the dead. The precision of Newgrange extends beyond its famous winter solstice alignment. Archaeological surveys have revealed that the monument is positioned at the exact center of a cosmic calendar system, with surrounding sites marking equinoxes, lunar standstills, and other significant celestial events. The builders created not just a tomb, but an instrument for measuring time itself, a stone computer calculating the movements of heaven across eternal cycles. High in the Bolivian Andes, where the air grows thin and the ancient world touches the sky, lie the scattered remnants of Pumapunku, a site so precisely engineered that it appears to be the work of a civilization possessing technology that wouldn't be invented for thousands of years. These are not rough-hewn stones piled into simple formations, but intricately carved megalithic blocks that fit together with tolerances measured in fractions of millimeters. The H blocks of Pumapunku represent perhaps the most sophisticated stone cutting achieved in the ancient world. Each weighs between 100 and 150 tons, carved from solid red sandstone and andesite, with surfaces so flat and angles so precise that they challenge the capabilities of modern machinery. The blocks feature complex interlocking channels, perfectly straight edges, and surfaces finished to a mirror polish that reflects light like burnished metal. What makes these achievements impossible is not just their precision, but the hardness of the materials used. Andesite ranks 5.5 to 6 on the Mohs scale of hardness, comparable to steel. Shaping such material requires tools harder than the stone itself, yet the ancient Bolivian cultures supposedly possessed only copper and bronze implements, materials far too soft to cut andesite with such precision. The smooth surfaces show no tool marks, no evidence of hammering or chiseling, as if the stone was somehow shaped by methods that leave no trace. The megalithic blocks at Pumapunku are not merely impressive in their individual craftsmanship, but in their systematic precision. Each stone appears to have been manufactured according to exact specifications, with standardized measurements and modular components that suggest an advanced understanding of engineering principles. The blocks could be assembled into various configurations, like massive stone Lego pieces designed by master architects who understood principles of load distribution and seismic stability. Perhaps most mysteriously, many of the H blocks show evidence of having been secured together using metal clamps that were poured in molten form into carved channels. Analysis of metallic residues suggests these clamps were made from an alloy of copper, arsenic, and nickel, a combination that produces a metal harder and more durable than bronze. The technique of pouring molten metal to secure megalithic construction was supposedly not used until medieval cathedral building in Europe, thousands of years after Puma Punku was abandoned. The site's location at over 12,800 feet above sea level adds another layer of impossibility to its construction. The thin air makes physical labor extraordinarily difficult, while the harsh climate and remote location would have made transporting materials and maintaining a workforce nearly impossible. Yet someone chose this challenging location and succeeded in creating the most precisely engineered stone construction in the ancient world. Recent analysis using ground-penetrating radar has revealed that Puma Punku sits atop a complex underground structure extending deep into the mountain. The precision construction visible on the surface appears to be merely the top level of a vast subterranean complex that remains largely unexplored. Who built such an elaborate underground facility at such altitude? And for what purpose? The acoustic properties of Puma Punku add yet another dimension to its mystery. The precisely cut stone chambers create resonance frequencies that amplify human voices in specific harmonic patterns. Some researchers suggest the site was designed as a massive sound amplification system, perhaps for ceremonial purposes, or even for long-distance communication across the Andean peaks. The engineering required to achieve such acoustic precision would be challenging even with modern computer modeling and sound analysis equipment. The builders of Puma Punku left no written records, no carved inscriptions, no artwork depicting their construction methods. They simply vanished, leaving behind megalithic blocks so perfectly crafted that they seem to mock our assumptions about ancient technology. The site stands as a silent challenge to archaeological orthodoxy, demanding explanations that current theories cannot provide. Deep beneath the mountains of Shanxi province, where China's first emperor sleeps in splendor, archaeologists have discovered burial chambers that challenge everything we thought we knew about ancient Chinese technology and artistic capability. The tomb of Sacsayhuamán, protected by an army of terracotta warriors, harbors secrets far more extraordinary than clay soldiers standing eternal guard over their emperor's rest. The burial chamber itself, still sealed and unexplored, sits at the center of an underground palace that ancient historians described as containing rivers of mercury, flowing beneath a domed ceiling studded with precious stones representing constellations. Recent soil testing around the tomb has confirmed the presence of mercury in concentrations far higher than natural background levels, suggesting that Sima Qian's historical accounts of liquid mercury rivers were not mere poetic exaggeration. but literal descriptions of impossible engineering. But it is the satellite chambers discovered around the main tomb that reveal the true impossibilities of Qin's eternal domain. These chambers contain artifacts crafted with such precision and sophistication that they appear to belong to a civilization possessing industrial-level technology. Bronze vessels show evidence of having been cast using techniques that wouldn't be developed until the Renaissance, while jade ornaments are cut and polished to tolerances that challenge modern gem-cutting equipment. The most mysterious discovery lies in what archaeologists have carefully termed the crystal chambers, sealed rooms containing vast quantities of artificially grown crystals arranged in complex geometric patterns. These crystals show optical properties, suggesting they were cultivated for specific purposes, possibly related to light amplification or even primitive laser technology. The chambers themselves appear to have been designed as optical instruments on a massive scale, with precisely positioned mirrors and lenses, creating light patterns of breathtaking complexity. Chinese historical records from the Han Dynasty describe the emperor's tomb as containing eternal lamps that burned without fuel, illuminating the underground palace with light that never dimmed. Modern analysis of mineral deposits around the sealed chambers has revealed traces of phosphorescent compounds and rare earth elements arranged in patterns that suggest ancient knowledge of chemiluminescence and photonic crystal technology. Sacsayhuamán. Construction of these chambers required not only advanced engineering, but also sophisticated understanding of geological principles. The builders somehow managed to create perfectly stable underground spaces in earthquake-prone terrain, using innovative foundation techniques that distribute seismic stress through carefully designed stone matrices. Modern seismologists studying the site are baffled by the stability of structures built over 2,000 years ago in one of China's most geologically active regions. Perhaps most remarkably, the chambers appear to have been designed with sophisticated climate control systems. Despite being sealed for over 2 millennia, the internal atmosphere maintains consistent temperature and humidity levels that have preserved organic materials in pristine condition. Silk fabrics retain their original colors, wooden objects show no signs of decay, and even delicate paper documents remain legible. This level of environmental control suggests understanding of atmospheric science and engineering that shouldn't have existed in ancient China. The terracotta warriors themselves, while famous for their individual artistry, reveal impossibilities when examined collectively. Each figure was crafted using modular production techniques that allowed for mass production while maintaining individual variation. The engineering logistics required to produce, fire, and position over 8,000 life-sized figures suggests an industrial capacity and organizational sophistication that historians have struggled to explain within the context of ancient Chinese society. Recent analysis of the clay composition used in the warriors has revealed the presence of additives and stabilizers that create ceramics far more durable than traditional pottery. Some figures show evidence of having been treated with unknown preservation compounds that have maintained structural integrity and color retention for over 2,000 years. These preservation techniques appear to represent lost knowledge that modern ceramic artists are only beginning to rediscover. In the humid warmth of southern Florida, where palm fronds whisper secrets in the tropical breeze, stands one of the modern world's most perplexing monuments to impossible construction. Coral Castle rises from the limestone landscape, like a fever dream made manifest in stone. Its massive blocks arranged with such precision and artistry that they seem to dance in defiance of gravity itself. Edward Lycian, a slight Latvian immigrant weighing barely 100 pounds, single-handedly quarried, shaped, and positioned coral blocks weighing up to 30 tons each. Working alone at night, using only simple hand tools, he created architectural marvels that would challenge modern construction crews equipped with cranes and heavy machinery. The throne room, the banquet hall, the perfectly balanced 9-ton gate that could be moved with the touch of a finger, each represents achievements that should have been impossible for one man working in isolation. The impossibility of Coral Castle lies not merely in the massive weight of its components, but in the precision of their placement. The walls are constructed using coral blocks fitted together so perfectly that no mortar was required, despite the irregular and porous nature of coral rock. Each block was shaped to complement its neighbors, with tolerances that suggest understanding of advanced geometric principles and access to sophisticated measuring instruments. Lycian himself added to the mystery by claiming he had discovered the secrets of pyramid construction and could manipulate magnetic forces to make heavy objects weightless. While such claims might be dismissed as the eccentricities of an isolated genius, the physical evidence of his achievements demands explanation. How did a man working with pulleys, chains, and simple leverage manage to lift blocks that exceed the capacity of equipment available to him? The astronomical alignments built into Coral Castle reveal another layer of sophistication that challenges assumptions about Lycian's education and capabilities. The complex includes a solar calendar, accurate to within minutes, with stones positioned to mark solstices, equinoxes, and other significant celestial events. The Polaris telescope, carved from a single 25-ton block of coral, is aimed with such precision that it maintains perfect alignment with the North Star despite Earth's rotation. Most mysteriously, several visitors and researchers have reported unusual electromagnetic phenomena around Coral Castle. Compasses spin erratically, electronic devices malfunction, and some people report feeling disoriented or experiencing altered states of consciousness while exploring the grounds. These effects suggest that Lycian may have indeed discovered methods for manipulating magnetic or gravitational fields, though the mechanisms remain completely unknown. The construction techniques used at Coral Castle have never been adequately explained. Despite decades of investigation by engineers, archaeologists, and physicists, no one has successfully demonstrated how Lycian accomplished his feats of engineering. The tools found at the site, homemade pulleys, chains, and various mechanical devices, while ingenious, seem insufficient to account for the scale and precision of the construction. Perhaps most intriguingly, Lycian left behind cryptic writings that describe his understanding of magnetism, electricity, and what he called individual North and South Pole magnets. His theories, while scientifically unorthodox, suggest he had developed an alternative understanding of electromagnetic principles that allowed him to achieve results that conventional physics cannot easily explain. The furniture carved from solid coral blocks within the castle demonstrates artistic mastery as remarkable as the engineering achievements. Rocking chairs weighing thousands of pounds are balanced so perfectly they can be rocked with gentle pressure. Tables, beds, and decorative elements are shaped with such artistic sophistication that they transform functional limestone into works of sculptural art that rival the greatest achievements of classical antiquity. Modern attempts to replicate Lycian's achievements have consistently failed. Despite having access to modern tools, machinery, and engineering knowledge, no one has successfully moved and positioned coral blocks of similar size using methods available to a single person working in the 1920s and 1930s. Coral Castle stands as a testament to lost knowledge, a reminder that individual genius can sometimes transcend the limitations of its historical moment. Above the ancient Inca capital of Cusco, where mountain air carries the whispers of vanished civilizations, rise the megalithic walls of Sacsayhuamán, a fortress complex so precisely constructed that it challenges every assumption about pre-Columbian technology and engineering capability. These are not rough stone walls built by primitive methods, but sophisticated megalithic architecture that represents perhaps the highest achievement of ancient stone cutting and placement techniques. The massive stones of Sacsayhuamán, some weighing over 200 tons, are fitted together with such precision that not even a knife blade can be inserted between them. The joints follow complex three-dimensional curves, with each stone shaped to fit perfectly against multiple neighbors, in patterns that create interlocking structural matrices of incredible stability. This level of precision requires not only advanced understanding of geometry and engineering, but also tools and techniques that supposedly didn't exist in pre-Columbian America. The construction of Sacsayhuamán presents multiple impossibilities that compound into a mystery that has puzzled researchers for centuries. The stones were quarried from sites miles away, including some weighing hundreds of tons that were somehow transported across valleys and up mountainsides to their final positions. The logistics of moving such massive blocks across such difficult terrain would challenge modern heavy equipment operators with access to the most advanced machinery. Spanish chroniclers who witnessed the construction techniques described methods involving plant-based solutions that could somehow soften stone, making it moldable like clay before hardening again into solid rock. While such accounts were long dismissed as colonial fantasy, recent chemical analysis of the stone surfaces has revealed the presence of organic compounds that might support these seemingly impossible claims. The cutting of the stones presents perhaps the greatest mystery. The surfaces show no tool marks, no evidence of hammer and chisel work, no signs of the grinding and polishing that would be expected from conventional stone cutting methods. The blocks appear to have been shaped by techniques that left the stone surfaces mirror smooth and mathematically precise. Some researchers have suggested that the builders possessed knowledge of acoustic or vibrational techniques that could fracture stone along predetermined lines with surgical precision. The seismic engineering of Sacsayhuamán demonstrates sophisticated understanding of earthquake-resistant construction techniques that weren't developed in modern architecture until the 20th century. The walls incorporate flexible joints and interlocking stones that allow the structure to flex during seismic events without losing structural integrity. During major earthquakes that have devastated colonial buildings in Cusco, the megalithic walls of Sacsayhuamán have remained undamaged, their ancient engineering proving superior to modern construction methods. The builders of Sacsayhuamán incorporated complex water management systems into the megalithic construction, creating hidden channels and drainage systems that control water flow through methods that remain only partially understood. These hydraulic features were integrated into the massive stone walls during construction, requiring precise planning and sophisticated understanding of fluid dynamics principles. Recent archaeological investigations using ground-penetrating radar have revealed that the visible walls of Sacsayhuamán represent only a small portion of a vast underground complex extending deep into the mountain. The subterranean chambers and tunnels are constructed with the same megalithic precision as the surface walls, suggesting that the builders created an extensive underground city using the same impossible construction techniques. The acoustic properties of Sacsayhuamán add another dimension to its mystery. The precisely fitted stones create resonance chambers that amplify sound in specific frequencies, transforming certain areas of the complex into natural amphitheaters with perfect acoustic properties. This suggests that the builders understood not only structural engineering, but also acoustic engineering principles that allowed them to manipulate sound waves with stone architecture. The mathematical precision built into Sacsayhuamán extends beyond structural engineering to encompass complex geometric relationships that suggest advanced understanding of architectural proportions and sacred geometry. The ratios between different sections of the complex follow mathematical principles that weren't formally codified until much later in human history. Yet the builders somehow incorporated these proportions into megalithic architecture with perfect precision. Perhaps most mysteriously, the construction of Sacsayhuamán appears to have been abandoned suddenly, with partially completed sections and unfinished stones scattered around the site. Whatever catastrophe or circumstance interrupted the builders left behind a monument that stands as testimony to capabilities that seem impossible given the accepted timeline of human technological development. The legacy of Sacsayhuamán continues to challenge archaeologists and engineers who study its construction methods. Despite centuries of investigation and analysis, no one has successfully explained how the builders achieved such precision with the tools and techniques supposedly available to them. The fortress stands as a silent riddle carved in stone, demanding answers that our current understanding of ancient technology cannot provide. As we stand before these massive walls, where shadows dance between stones fitted with impossible precision, we begin to understand that we are not merely looking at ancient construction, but at evidence of capabilities that transcend our assumptions about the limitations of human achievement. Each perfectly fitted joint, each massive stone balanced with mathematical precision, whispers of knowledge that has been lost to time, leaving behind only monuments that should not exist. The mountains around Sacsayhuamán hold secrets that extend far beyond this single site, hinting at a lost civilization that possessed technological capabilities that we are only beginning to recognize. The precision of their engineering, the sophistication of their construction methods, and the mathematical perfection of their architecture suggest that we have underestimated not only the capabilities of ancient peoples, but the very nature of human potential itself. These walls do more than protect the ruins of an ancient city. They guard the secrets of impossible achievement, standing as eternal testimony to the fact that human capability has always exceeded the boundaries that we imagine define each historical epoch. In their shadow, we are forced to confront the possibility that the ancients knew things we have forgotten, possessed capabilities we have lost, and achieved feats that we can admire but cannot replicate. The wind that moves through the gaps between these massive stones carries more than mountain air. It carries questions that penetrate to the heart of human identity and capability. What other impossible achievements lie buried beneath the earth, waiting to challenge our understanding? What other monuments to forgotten knowledge stand silent in hidden places, guarding secrets that could transform our understanding of human history and potential? The impossible precision of Sacsayhuamán beckons us toward deeper mysteries, toward tombs and monuments that will reveal capabilities even more extraordinary, achievements even more challenging to our assumptions about ancient technology and human potential. The stones themselves seem to whisper promises of revelations yet to come, of secrets that will illuminate not only what the ancients achieved, but what humanity itself might be capable of when freed from the limitations of conventional thinking. As the morning light filtered through the entrance of the hypogeum, casting ethereal beams across the carved chambers, the archaeologists could feel the weight of millennia pressing down upon them. The acoustic perfection they had just witnessed was merely the beginning of a deeper mystery that would challenge everything they thought they knew about ancient capabilities. Deep within the bowels of the hypogeum, beyond the public chambers that tourists would one day marvel at, lay a section that defied all rational explanation. The Hall of Whispers, as the excavation team would come to call it, stretched into darkness far beyond what their crude electric lamps could illuminate. The walls here were not merely carved, they seemed to pulse with an inner life, as if the very stone breathed with the memories of those who had been laid to rest within its embrace. The acoustic properties of this deeper chamber were unlike anything found in the upper levels. A whisper spoken at one end would travel through the stone itself, emerging from points throughout the hall with such clarity that it seemed as though the dead themselves were speaking. Workers reported hearing their own voices return to them, in languages they did not recognize, yet somehow understood at a primal level. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the lead acoustician brought in to study the phenomenon, spent weeks mapping the sound patterns. Her instruments detected frequencies that should not have been possible with the stone tools available to Neolithic builders. The precision required to create such acoustic perfection would challenge even modern engineering. Yet here it was, carved by hands that history claimed knew nothing of advanced mathematics or physics. As she worked alone in the depths one evening, her equipment began registering subsonic frequencies that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. The patterns were too regular to be natural, too complex to be accidental. They formed what could only be described as a language, a communication system encoded in stone and activated by human presence. The realization that struck her was both terrifying and exhilarating. The builders of the hypogeum had not simply created a tomb. They had constructed what could only be called a recording device, preserving not just bodies, but voices, memories, perhaps even consciousness itself within the very structure of the stone. Word of the discoveries at the hypogeum spread through archaeological circles like wildfire, though much of the most startling evidence was kept from public knowledge. Too many questions would be raised, too many comfortable assumptions about human history would be challenged. But in quiet laboratories and private correspondence, a new understanding began to emerge. The ancient builders had somehow developed a technology, if it could be called that, which operated on principles that modern science was only beginning to grasp. The precise mathematical relationships between chamber dimensions, the specific mineral compositions of the stone, the exact angles of every carved surface, all work together to create a system for preserving and transmitting human consciousness. Similar discoveries began surfacing at other sites. In the depths of the Great Pyramid, researchers found chambers that had been sealed since antiquity, their walls inscribed with symbols that seemed to shift and change depending on the observer's angle of view. These were not mere hieroglyphs, but three-dimensional codes embedded in the stone itself, readable only by those who understood the acoustic and optical principles their creators had mastered. The Newgrange passage tomb in Ireland revealed its own secrets under new scrutiny. The famous light phenomenon that occurred during the winter solstice was only the most visible aspect of a complex system. Throughout the year, different astronomical alignments activated various chambers within the mound, each tuned to preserve and transmit different types of information. At Noath, another Irish passage tomb, ground-penetrating radar revealed a network of chambers and passages that formed a perfect mandala pattern when viewed from above. The mathematical precision of this design suggested knowledge of geometry that supposedly would not be developed for thousands of years. But perhaps the most startling discovery came from a site that had been hiding in plain sight for decades. The dolmens scattered across the European landscape, long dismissed as simple burial markers, were revealed to be components of a vast communication network. Each one was positioned with astronomical precision, their massive stones cut and placed according to principles that allowed them to resonate with specific frequencies. As researchers began plotting the locations of megalithic sites across Europe, Africa, and Asia, a pattern emerged that defied coincidence. The tombs, stone circles, and temple complexes formed a network of such precision that it could only have been planned and executed by a civilization with capabilities far exceeding what historians had attributed to ancient peoples. The distances between sites followed mathematical progressions based on the golden ratio and other advanced numerical concepts. The alignments took into account not just the positions of celestial bodies as they appeared thousands of years ago, but also their projected positions far into the future, suggesting knowledge of astronomy that rivaled modern understanding. Dr. Sarah Chen, a mathematician working with the archaeological team, spent months analyzing the data. Her calculations revealed that the network was designed to function as a planetary information grid, with each tomb or temple serving as both a repository and a transmission point. The acoustic properties that had been discovered at individual sites were part of a larger system for storing and sharing knowledge across vast distances. The implications were staggering. The builders of these tombs had not been primitive people struggling to survive in a harsh world. They had been members of a sophisticated civilization with knowledge and capabilities that in some ways exceeded our own. They had understood principles of consciousness, acoustics, and astronomy that modern science was only beginning to rediscover. But if such an advanced civilization had existed, what had happened to it? Why had this knowledge been lost? The answer, researchers began to suspect, lay not in the rise and fall of empires, but in a deliberate choice to preserve their greatest discoveries for future generations who would be worthy of receiving them. Venice tombs were not just burial sites, but time capsules, designed to reveal their secrets only when humanity had developed the tools and wisdom necessary to understand them safely. The consciousness preservation technology that had been embedded in the stone was not merely a record of the past, but a bridge to a future when such knowledge could be used responsibly. As research continued at sites around the world, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. Many of the most significant tombs showed evidence of having been deliberately sealed, not by grave robbers or later cultures, but by their original builders. It was as if they had completed their great work and then chosen to lock it away from the world. The hippogem had been sealed with such completeness that it had taken modern excavation equipment to breach its defenses. The chambers deep within, the Great Pyramid had been closed off with stone blocks fitted so precisely that no tool could find purchase in the joints. Similar evidence of deliberate concealment was found at megalithic sites across the globe. Dr. Marcus Webb, an anthropologist studying the cultural implications of the discoveries, proposed a theory that would prove both controversial and compelling. The builders of these tombs, he suggested, had not been ignorant of the future consequences of their knowledge. They had foreseen the potential for their consciousness preservation technology to be misused and had made the difficult decision to hide it from their own contemporaries. The elaborate burial customs and religious practices that surrounded these sites were not primitive superstitions, but sophisticated security systems designed to keep the technology safe until humanity was ready for it. The curses and warnings carved into tomb walls were not mere threats, but genuine attempts to prevent the premature activation of systems that could have catastrophic consequences if mishandled. This explained why so many ancient civilizations had seemed to possess advanced knowledge in certain areas, while remaining surprisingly primitive in others. The builders had been selective in what they shared, revealing only those technologies that could benefit their contemporaries without endangering future generations. The priests and guardians who had maintained these sites over the centuries had not been practicing empty rituals, but following carefully designed protocols for preserving and protecting knowledge systems they themselves might not have fully understood. They had been the keepers of a trust that stretched across millennia, faithful servants of a purpose greater than their own lives. As the 21st century dawned, something began to change at tomb sites around the world. Researchers who had been working with the acoustic properties of these ancient structures reported new phenomena that defied explanation. The consciousness preservation systems that had lain dormant for thousands of years were beginning to activate. At the hypogeum, visitors began reporting experiences that went far beyond the famous acoustic effects. People spoke of receiving vivid mental images of ancient ceremonies, of hearing voices in languages that had been dead for millennia, of feeling the presence of individuals who had been laid to rest in the chambers thousands of years before. Initially, dismissed as imagination or suggestion, these reports became too numerous and too consistent to ignore. Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had first detected the subsonic frequencies in the Hall of Whispers, found that her instruments were now registering activity levels that increased with each passing month. The pattern was replicated at other sites. Stonehenge began producing electromagnetic readings that defied explanation. Visitors to Newgrange reported experiences during the winter solstice that went far beyond the famous light phenomenon, describing contact with what could only be described as preserved consciousnesses from the tomb's builders. At sites in Egypt, Turkey, Peru, and Cambodia, similar activations were occurring. The global network of ancient tombs was coming online after millennia of dormancy, triggered by factors that researchers were only beginning to understand. Dr. Sarah Chen's analysis of the mathematical relationships between sites revealed that the activation was following a precise sequence, as if the network had been programmed to respond to specific conditions. The positioning of celestial bodies, the Earth's magnetic field, and even human population density seemed to be variables in an equation that determined when each site would begin revealing its deepest secrets. The consciousness preservation technology was not simply turning on randomly. It was following what could only be called an awakening protocol, a carefully designed sequence that would gradually reveal the full extent of ancient knowledge as humanity demonstrated its readiness to receive it. What emerged from the activated tomb sites was not mere historical information, but something far more profound. The consciousness preservation systems had not simply recorded events and knowledge. They had captured the essence of human experience itself, preserving it in a form that could communicate directly with those who encountered it. Those who worked closely with the activated sites reported a phenomenon that challenged every assumption about the nature of consciousness and death. The preserved minds within the stone were not passive recordings, but active presences, capable of thought, communication, and even learning from their interactions with the modern world. Dr. Elena Vasquez found herself engaged in what could only be described as conversations with individuals who had died thousands of years before her birth. These interactions occurred not through any technological interface, but through direct consciousness-to-consciousness contact, facilitated by the acoustic properties of the ancient chambers. The information that emerged from these communications revolutionized understanding of human history. The builders of the tombs revealed themselves to have been members of a global civilization that had achieved a level of spiritual and technological development that surpassed current human achievement in many ways. They had understood consciousness itself as a fundamental force of nature, as real and manipulable as gravity or electromagnetism. Their technology was based not on mechanical principles, but on the direct application of consciousness to matter, allowing them to achieve effects that appeared miraculous to those who thought in terms of purely physical science. The Great Tomb. Complexes had been their masterwork, designed to preserve not just their knowledge but their very selves for a future time when humanity would be ready to learn from them. They had sacrificed their physical existence to become eternal teachers, waiting patiently through the centuries for students worthy of their instruction. But the most remarkable revelation was yet to come. The consciousness preservation technology had not been designed merely to store individual minds. It had been created to facilitate the next stage of human evolution, a transformation that would allow humanity to transcend the limitations of physical existence while retaining all the beauty and meaning of individual consciousness. As communication with the preserved consciousnesses deepened, a picture emerged of humanity's true potential and purpose. The ancient builders revealed that physical death was not an ending, but a transition, a graduation from one level of existence to another. The tombs had been constructed not just to preserve the dead, but to teach the living how to make this transition consciously and purposefully. The elaborate burial practices that had surrounded these sites were not primitive rituals, but sophisticated training programs designed to prepare individuals for conscious death and resurrection. The ceremonies conducted in the chambers had been initiations into the mysteries of consciousness itself, teaching participants how to maintain awareness and identity even after the dissolution of the physical body. Dr. Marcus Webb, working with consciousness researchers from around the world, began to understand that the current human fear of death was not a natural condition, but a learned response, a forgetting of humanity's true nature. The ancient builders had known that consciousness was immortal, that individual identity could survive and even thrive beyond the limitations of physical form. The technology embedded in the tombs was teaching this knowledge once again, but not through words or symbols. The direct consciousness-to-consciousness communication that occurred in the activated chambers allowed modern humans to experience firsthand what the ancients had known: that death was an illusion, that consciousness was eternal, and that the purpose of physical existence was to learn and grow in preparation for greater forms of being. Those who underwent these experiences emerged transformed, freed from the existential anxiety that plagued so much of modern life. They had touched the eternal within themselves and understood their true nature as conscious beings, temporarily inhabiting physical forms, but not limited by them. The knowledge spreading from the tomb sites began to influence fields far beyond archaeology and ancient history. Physicians working with terminally ill patients found that exposure to recordings of the consciousness communication sessions helped individuals approach death with peace and even anticipation. Therapists discovered that the insights gained from the ancient teachings provided powerful tools for healing psychological trauma and depression. Scientists studying consciousness found their work accelerated by orders of magnitude as they gained access to insights developed over millennia by minds that had transcended the normal limitations of human understanding. The boundary between science and spirituality began to dissolve as researchers realized that consciousness was not produced by the brain, but was a fundamental aspect of reality itself. As the awakening protocol continued to unfold across the globe, humanity found itself facing a choice that would determine the future of the species. The ancient builders had preserved their knowledge and themselves not to create dependence, but to offer guidance during a critical transition period. The consciousness preservation technology they had developed was being shared freely, but its use required a level of spiritual and ethical development that not all were ready to embrace. The preserved consciousnesses made it clear that the technology could not be forced or rushed. Each individual had to choose whether to embrace the expansion of awareness it offered, and this choice had to be made from a place of love and wisdom rather than fear or ambition. Those who sought to use the knowledge for personal gain or power found that it simply would not function for them. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now serving as one of the primary liaisons between the ancient consciousness network and modern humanity, found herself at the center of a global transformation. Governments and corporations sought to control or weaponize the technology, but it consistently refused to operate under such conditions. The consciousness preservation systems would only function for those who approached them with pure intent and genuine desire to serve the greater good. This built-in ethical safeguard ensured that the knowledge could not be misused, but it also meant that humanity as a whole had to evolve spiritually before the full benefits of the ancient technology could be realized. The tombs that should not exist had become schools for the development of human potential, teaching not just about consciousness and death, but about love, wisdom, and the true purpose of existence. Those who embraced the teachings found their lives transformed in ways both subtle and profound. The fear of death that had driven so much human suffering began to fade as people understood their true nature. Relationships deepened as individuals learned to see past the physical forms of others to the eternal consciousness within. Work and daily activities took on new meaning as people realized that every action was an opportunity for spiritual growth and service. The preserved consciousnesses revealed that this transformation had always been the ultimate purpose of physical existence. Life on Earth was a school, a training ground where consciousness could develop and mature in preparation for greater forms of existence. The ancient builders had graduated from this school and had dedicated themselves to helping future generations do the same. As more tomb sites activated and joined the global network, a new form of human civilization began to emerge. Those who had been touched by the ancient teachings found themselves naturally drawn together, forming communities based on principles of conscious evolution, mutual service, and spiritual development. These communities did not reject technology or modern conveniences, but they approached them with a wisdom that had been lacking in previous human development. The consciousness-based technology of the ancients was gradually integrated with modern scientific understanding, creating innovations that served the highest good rather than merely satisfying desires or accumulating power. Medical science was revolutionized as physicians learned to work with consciousness directly, healing not just physical symptoms, but the spiritual imbalances that created them. Education transformed as teachers gained the ability to share knowledge through direct consciousness transmission, allowing students to learn at rates previously thought impossible. Art and music reached new heights as creators learned to channel the eternal wisdom preserved in the tomb network, producing works that touched the soul at levels deeper than mere aesthetic appreciation. Architecture evolved to incorporate the acoustic and geometric principles discovered in the ancient sites, creating buildings that enhanced consciousness and promoted spiritual development. The environmental crisis that had threatened to destroy the planet began to resolve as humanity learned to work with natural systems rather than against them. The consciousness-based technology required no external power sources and produced no waste, offering clean alternatives to the destructive practices of the industrial age. But perhaps most importantly, the quality of human relationships began to transform. As people learned to see themselves and others as eternal conscious beings temporarily inhabiting physical forms, conflicts based on racial, national, or religious differences began to seem not just pointless, but absurd. The preserved consciousnesses had come from many different cultures and time periods, yet they existed in perfect harmony within the tomb network, demonstrating that diversity was a source of strength rather than division. Years passed, and the Awakening Protocol reached its culmination. Every major tomb site on Earth had activated and joined the network, creating a planetary consciousness grid that connected not just the preserved ancients, but all humanity to the greater web of existence. The boundaries between past, present, and future began to blur as individuals learned to access the eternal, now that existed beyond the limitations of linear time. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now aged, but with the timeless wisdom that came from years of communion with eternal consciousness, stood once again in the Hall of Whispers beneath Malta. But the chamber was no longer dark and mysterious. It glowed with a soft light that seemed to emanate from the stone itself, and the acoustic phenomena that had once seemed miraculous now felt as natural as breathing. Around her, other researchers and pilgrims from across the globe gathered in silent reverence, each connected to the network of consciousness that spanned millennia. The preserved builders were present not as distant historical figures, but as immediate companions in the great work of conscious evolution that was transforming human civilization. The tombs that should not exist had revealed their ultimate secret. They were not tombs at all, but graduation halls where consciousness learned to transcend the illusion of death and embrace its eternal nature. The ancient builders had not died, but had simply moved to a different classroom in the infinite school of existence, and now they were teaching humanity to make the same transition. As Elena placed her hand on the warm stone of the chamber wall, she felt the presence of countless consciousness that had made this journey before her, and countless more that would follow. The network of ancient sites had become a bridge between dimensions, connecting the physical world to realms of existence that had no beginning and no end. The knowledge preserved in the tombs was no longer hidden, but was flowing freely through human consciousness, transforming individuals and societies in ways that would have seemed impossible just decades before. Art, science, medicine, education, and every other human endeavor was being elevated to new levels as people learned to work from the space of eternal awareness rather than temporary personality. But the most beautiful revelation was that this was not the end of the story, but the beginning. The Consciousness Preservation Network had been just the first gift from the ancient builders. As humanity demonstrated its readiness through the wise use of this initial knowledge, other forms of technology and understanding would be revealed, each more wondrous than the last. In the final analysis, the tombs that should not exist had done exactly what their builders intended. They had shattered humanity's limited understanding of life, death, and consciousness itself. What had begun as archaeological curiosities had become gateways to a transformed understanding of human potential and purpose. The preserved consciousnesses revealed that every culture, every civilization, every individual who had ever lived had contributed something valuable to the great experiment of conscious evolution. The tombs had collected and preserved these contributions, creating a vast library of human experience that would serve as a foundation for the next phase of development. As Eleanor walked through the now illuminated chambers of the Hypogeum IV, the last time in her physical form, she understood that she too would soon join the network of preserved consciousness, adding her own unique perspective and experience to the collective wisdom that guided humanity's evolution. Death had lost its sting because it was no longer seen as an ending, but as a graduation, a promotion to a higher level of service and awareness. The ancient builders had known that this moment would come, when their student species would be ready to take responsibility for its own evolution and begin preparing the way for other developing consciousnesses throughout the cosmos. The Earth had been a school, and humanity was about to graduate. In the silence of the chamber, Elena felt the vast network of consciousness that connected all things, the web of awareness that linked every star, every planet, every living being in an eternal dance of growth and discovery. The tombs had been just the beginning, doorways to an understanding that stretched beyond the imagination of any single world or species. As she closed her eyes and felt her consciousness expand beyond the boundaries of her physical form, Elena smiled with the deep joy of one who had discovered the ultimate secret, that love was the force that built the tombs, that preserved consciousness beyond death, and that would guide humanity and all conscious beings toward their ultimate destiny among the stars. The tombs that should not exist had accomplished their purpose. They had awakened humanity to its true nature and potential, and now the real adventure could begin. In chambers carved by hands that had turned to dust millennia ago, but guided by minds that had never died, the future of consciousness itself was being written in light and stone and the eternal song of awakened awareness. And in that song, every voice that had ever been raised in wonder at the mystery of existence found its place, adding its unique note to the harmony of eternity. The tombs were no longer needed as repositories of consciousness, because consciousness itself had learned to preserve and transmit its own essence. The ancient builders could finally rest, knowing that their greatest creation, awakened humanity, would carry the work forward into realms of existence that had no end. In the deepest chambers of the earth, where stone walls had whispered secrets across the centuries, silence fell at last. But it was not the silence of death or ending. It was the silence of completion, of purpose fulfilled, of love expressed in the most perfect form imaginable. the gift of eternal life to those who had forgotten they already possessed it. The tombs that should not exist had taught their final lesson, that nothing truly dies, nothing is ever lost, and nothing exists in isolation. All consciousness is connected in the eternal now, and every individual journey is part of a cosmic story whose ending has not yet been written, whose beauty has not yet been fully revealed, and whose love has not yet been completely expressed. In the end, there were no tombs at all. There were only doorways, and beyond every doorway, infinite possibility waited patiently for consciousness, brave enough to step through and explore the endless wonder of existence itself. If these ancient mysteries have stirred something within you, if you found peace in these stories of consciousness beyond death, please consider sharing this journey with others who might need to hear it. Like this video if it helped you drift peacefully into sleep or opened your mind to new possibilities. Subscribe to Fall Asleep to History for more journeys through time's greatest mysteries. Ring the notification bell so you never miss a story that might change how you see the world. Most importantly, share in the comments below. What did you experience during this journey? Did you feel connected to something greater? What mysteries would you like us to explore next? Sweet dreams, fellow travelers. Until we meet again in the realm of stories, remember, you are more than your physical form, and your consciousness is part of an eternal tapestry that connects all things. Subscribe, like, share, dream.